Thank you very much for listening to this week's share on the Sedra of Tetzaveh. And this coming Shabbos is also Shabbos Zachor. This is the Shabbos before Purim, where we read the Maftir of the Sedra from Devarim of Tetzaveh, where we are told to remember Amalek. And this is a mitzvah that is incumbent upon all sections of the Jewish people, and we have the tradition that everybody will go to shul and hear this particular reading, which is the Maftir from Tetzaveh, and that is Devarim chapter 25, verses 17 through to 19. And when we read this Maftir, we say, Zohar es asher asa lecha Amalek, remember what Amalek did to you, Baderech b'tzeichem b'Mitzrayim, on the way when you came out of Egypt, asher korcha baderech, when he surprised you, happened to find you on the way, v'yazane b'cho kol hanechashalim acharecha, and cut off all the weak people at your rear, v'ata oyev v'yogea, and you were parched and weary, v'lo yorei Elohim, and they he did not, the nation of Amalek did not fear God. V'haya v'haniach Adonai Elohecha lecha b'chol oyevecha misoviv ba'aretz asher Adonai Elohecha nosei lecha, and it will be when Hashem, your God, gives you rest or relief from all your enemies around in the land that Hashem is giving to you, Nachla Larishta, as an inheritance to keep as a possession, Timche es Zeche Amalek, you shall delete the memory of Amalek, Mitachas Hashemayim, from under the heavens, Lo Tishkach, do not forget. And the commandment to remember Amalek is something that we are aware of as we are going through our current challenges, and we see the evil of people who do not fear God, irrespective of what religion they claim to be from. That the fact that people can behave in a way where they attack anybody and murder and pillage, this is the conduct of Amalek, and we can see that this concept that we're homing in on here is velo yorei Elohim. There was a lack of fear of in God, a fear, a lack of a concept of morality, that one is accountable and one is bound by. And with these facts that we're living with today very much evident, we dedicate our learning and our prayers to the safe and speedy release of all of the hostages and the safety and success of all of the soldiers in the IDF as they continue their heroic mission to defend the people and the land of Israel. And thinking about this special Maftir Zachor that we read, and then looking at this week's Sedra of Tetzaveh, we can combine the threads and the messages that come from this Sedra, which deals almost exclusively. It opens with the special oil that needs to be produced for the lighting of the menorah, but then the Sedra proceeds very quickly to a description of the special garments of the priests in general and the Kohen Gadol, the high priest in particular. And as we look at these very specific garments, and again, as with the Mishkan, we have such intricate instructions in the Torah that we are able effectively to make these life-size models. So we can ask, we don't walk around dressed like that. And even in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, it was just the Kohen Gadol who wore all the 8 garments. The other Kohanim wore 4 garments. And the Kohen Gadol had this special set of garments. So how can we extrapolate and take messages and lessons that impact on our lives when we look at these clothes, when we read the words in the Sedra that describe these clothes? And there is also many years in the 19-year cycle that we read the Sedra of Tetzaveh. It is often the Sedra before Purim. And there is a connection between the garments of the Kohen Gadol and Purim as well. And that is also part of the message that we can weave together. And the instruction that Moshe Rabbeinu is given in the beginning of the Sedra of Tetzaveh, towards the beginning, Moshe Rabbeinu is told, that is chapter 28, verse 20. Va'asisa vigdei kodesh la'aron achicha, and you shall make garments of holiness for Aaron your brother, lechavod ulesifares, for glory and for splendour. And the garments of the Kohen Gadol that Moshe Rabbeinu is specifically told that he should make. And this is unusual because actually he wasn't going to make these garments. It was the craftspeople, the weavers, and the embroiderers who were going to make these special garments. So the fact that it's addressed specifically to Moshe Rabbeinu, this is something that is very unusual. And also that they're called Bigdei Kodesh, that they are called garments of holiness. With the other objects of the Mishkan, they're not qualified, they're not described with the adjective Kodesh. They're not described as holy with the other items of the Mishkan. So why does the Torah tell us that these garments have to be garments of Kodesh? That this idea that these very special garments that look so rich and lavish, that they have to really serve the purpose of Kedusha, of on the one hand separating ourselves from undesirable aspects of behavior, of understanding that in order to develop a special connection to Hashem, we need to work very, very hard on our levels of humility. And we can understand that it is this requirement to work so hard on our levels of humility that is so necessary when you are creating these very lavish royal garments. Because when somebody puts on clothes of that nature, then it is very easy to forget that everything is from Hashem, to forget that we are essentially flesh and blood, we come from dust, we return to dust. It's easy to get pulled into the illusion of grandeur and to think that there is nothing more grand than ourselves. And so when we see that the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu has to make these garments himself, Moshe Rabbeinu, well, not actually, but the instruction is addressed to him as if he is going to make them himself. And I would suggest that the essential quality of Moshe Rabbeinu as the most humble of all people is perhaps one of the reasons why that is he has to weave into these garments his own very special humility, because the danger of any person putting on these garments will be that he will be distracted from that humility. And the position of Kohen Gadol is very much serving Hashem and serving the people. And so I think that it's Moshe Rabbeinu who is giving us the extra strength of spirit that the Kohen Gadol is going to need in order to be able to keep his own sense of importance at the level that he is a somebody who the people look up to, and he is receiving a lot of honor and respect, yet he does not let that go to his head. And I think that is something, a message that we can learn from the unusual expression of the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu is addressed as if he personally were making these garments, and they are called garments of Kodesh. And we see, as a connection to the Purim story, that the danger of these special garments, which possibly are connected to the coats that Hashem made for Adam and Chava, for Adam and Eve, when they sinned in the Garden of Eden, and they realized when the sin corrupted them, and they then had a Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination inside themselves, and they became aware that they were uncovered. And we see that Hashem makes them, the Pasuk in Bereshit says, coats of garments of light. Garments of leather. This is chapter 3 in Bereshit, verse 21. Vayas Adonai Elohim la'adam u'le'ishto kosnos or, and Hashem, God, made for man and for his wife coats, and it's or with an iron, which means leather. Vayal bishem, and he clothed them. And there is a suggestion that before the sin, they wore garments of or with an aleph, garments of light. But after the sin, they had to be covered with clothes, because the purity that existed was no longer present. And this is something that we see as we go through our lives, as we go through our history, and we can see that we need to have special clothing in order to maintain our levels of separateness from behavior and thoughts that are not appropriate and not conducive to a higher spiritual connection with Hashem. And as we connect the garments of the Kohen Gadol that we read about in the Sedra of Tetzaveh to the story of the Megillas Esther, the rabbis tell us that because of the similarity of language that's used in the Megillah, which describes the clothes that Achashverosh wore as Yokar Tiferes, and the similarity of expression to the description of the clothes of the Kohen Gadol in our Sedra of Tetzaveh, often read before Purim, Lechavod or Luciferes. And the rabbis, the Medrash tells us that Achashverosh actually wore, he had taken from the first temple, the first Beis Hamikdash, he had taken the garments of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest, and he wore them for this feast. But when these garments are worn by somebody with the wrong attitude, then they are not going to serve the purpose of elevating. They are going to be the distraction. They're going to be something that takes us away from a connection with Hashem. And this is really what Achashverosh represents, the pitfall, the danger of these very beautiful royal garments being worn by someone with the wrong attitude. And this is really something, as we remember that Hashem calls us a nation of, that Hashem wants us to be a nation of priests to him, that although we have a special group of Bnei Israel, this is a position that one is born into, that one is a Kohen, that not everybody can be a Kohen. But Hashem also tells us that we are a nation of priests. So how can we explain this apparent contradiction? And I think we can understand it, that we don't have the technical requirement to serve in the Beis Hamikdash, to wear the particular clothes, but we have that mission to elevate ourselves, to achieve the highest levels of kedusha, like these clothes that had to be invested with kedusha, with this word that's so hard to translate, but it's talking about making sure that we distance ourselves from other behavior and attitudes and dress that take us further away from our intrinsic holy connection and closeness to Hashem. And this is something that we want to never be distracted by the grandeur of our external covering, and always be conscious of the fact that we are royalty in the deepest sense, that we have to connect to our higher mission, connect to our higher values, and live our life in such a way that we raise ourselves, and in so doing become closer to Hashem, taking the message and the lesson of the special garments of the Kohen Gadol as they are described in this week's Sedra, and the connections that we find that join them with the parts of the Megillah. And please God, wishing everybody a very good Shabbos, and we should hear good news in this time of Simcha, and this time of redemption, of salvation from our enemies, of obliterating the memory of Amalek, of evil in the world, as we continue to strive to do just that. And please God, we should merit to see it happen speedily and in our time. Thank you very much for listening, and Shabbat Shalom.